This photo captures a group of friends having fun in the middle of the Wiccado River, still unaware that, just moments later, they'll hear a siren that will change their lives forever. And the most tragic part, not all of them will make it out alive. Today's case sent shockwaves across New Zealand, as a series of small oversights and neglect triggered an unstoppable chain of events. Watch until the end to uncover the shocking truth behind the mystic siren that foreshadowed an irreversible tragedy, and how missing warning signs and absent barriers nearly cost 6 more lives. But fair warning, as always, viewer discretion is advised. On February 6, 2017, a group of young people were getting ready to pack up after a busy weekend spent at the Flochella Festival on Lake Taupau. The date of their trip wasn't chosen by chance. It was Waitangi Day, a national holiday celebrated for over a century, marking the signing of New Zealand's founding document. And if you're one of those who picture the day spent in snow and down jackets, in the southern hemisphere, February is the height of summer, with temperatures reaching over 30 degrees Celsius. For the entire Waitangi weekend, traditionally held from Friday to Sunday, 21-year-old Rachel De Jong had decided to spend time with her closest friends, most of them from Auckland University of Technology, where they studied physiotherapy together. It wasn't their first time. The group had taken many joint trips and outdoor activities including swimming, hiking, and exploring scenic spots. So by now, they were a close-knit team on nearly every vacation. Rachel's best friend and perfect partner in crime, Maddie, lived in the countryside near the city of Taupau and invited the group to stay at her family home after the festival. The initial plan was to return to Auckland directly from there. By 9 a.m. local time, they had begun packing and loading the cars. With the holiday in full swing, traffic was expected to build quickly, so they needed to get on the road early to avoid delays. But Rachel, often the leader and main driver in the group, had another idea. She suggested a quick stop on the way back, a secluded, pretty river spot she and Maddie had discovered earlier. The girls described it as quiet, scenic, and the perfect way to end the trip. Sisters Alice and Michaela, along with Gemma, had traveled with Rachel many times before and agreed without hesitation. Sam and Rise, who had recently joined the group, were also on board. So they all got into the 3 cars and set off. Around 11:45 a.m., the group pulled off onto a bypass road and parked their cars. Since Rochelle and Maddie were the only ones familiar with the area, they led the group to an unmarked but well-trodden bush path that connected to an informal trail leading down to the river. By 11:50 a.m., they were still walking along the narrow track. The path grew steeper and more challenging as they neared the riverbed. Along the way, the group even had to clamber over rocks and hold onto tree roots to maintain balance. But fortunately, in some spots, previous visitors had tied ropes to nearby trees to help people descend the steepest parts of the trail. The friends took it all in stride, treating the rough path as just another part of the adventure, all while chatting loudly and filming everything on Rachel's GoPro. Then, suddenly, the laughter stopped as the group heard a loud, long-lasting sound coming from somewhere nearby. They paused for a moment and looked around in confusion. The sound was clearly reminiscent of a siren. Of course, they all knew that sirens typically signal danger, but none of them understood exactly what it meant in this situation. And since everything looked perfectly fine, they eventually decided to keep going as the river was now just ahead. The spot they finally reached was exactly as pretty as Rachel had described. A dry, rocky section of riverbed below the Arataisha Dam, with clear, almost crystal-like water. This area is part of the Arataisha Rapids, a popular tourist destination just north of Taupau. A fascinating release of water from the dam is the main reason tourists come here. It's a scheduled event that takes place up to 4 times a day during the summer months, from October to March, with each release lasting around 15 minutes. Official visitors usually stay on the clearly marked upper lookout tracks where they can watch the dam releases from above. But the group had taken a hidden route from below, one that led straight to the rocks and pools in the riverbed that allowed them to explore the location up close and enjoy the warm pool water with no other soul around. The group didn't waste time. All of them took off their clothes, left their belongings, and instantly jumped into the pool, happily splashing each other like kids. After a while, Gemma and Michaela stayed in the water, while Maddie, Alice, and Rachel climbed onto the lower rocks to capture some photos on a GoPro. Sam and Rise were sitting on rocks, chatting and watching the others. Probably a professional habit, since both of them were police officers. Still, everyone was having fun in their own way, until suddenly at 11:55 a.m., the second siren sounded, much louder and more direct. This time, some in the group began to wonder if the sound was somehow connected to their exact location. Yet, with nothing happening once again, the overall mood remained the same. They continued swimming, filming, chatting, and savoring every last moment of their perfect vacation. But then, just 4 minutes later, at 11:59 a.m., came the third siren. This time, the mood shifted slightly. Gemma and Michaela began climbing onto rocks near Sam and Rise. Sam helped the girls get into position and called out to the others to come up. Just in case, Rachel moved to a larger rock above the riverbed, with Maddie following. Alice stayed at the lower rock and was ready to climb higher, but unfortunately, she simply wouldn't have enough time, because seconds later, a loud mechanical sound echoed through the rocks. Exactly at 12 p.m., the dam gates opened just 200 meters upstream, and the water was coming. The pool where the group had been swimming lay within the Arataisha Dam spill zone, and they simply didn't know that the 3 sirens they had heard, spaced 10, 5, and 1 minute apart, were part of a standard protocol used every time the dam performed a scheduled release. The water, which had been held back just minutes earlier, was now rushing in at over 80,000 liters per second. During dam releases, its velocities can reach 15 to 25 kilometers per hour. To put that in perspective, at that speed, water hits your body with the force of a moving car in a parking lot. Not deadly at a glance, but enough to knock you off your feet and drag you if you're even slightly off balance. When the surge hit, it filled the dry riverbed in seconds. Panic followed. There was nothing the group could do to stop the powerful wall of water coming straight toward them. Sam and Rise rushed to climb higher since the rocks where the group had been just minutes earlier were no longer safe, but the 5 girls were now cut off and stranded on a lower rock between them, surrounded by rising water. At first, they thought they could wait it out, but the current kept building. So Sam, from above, yelled for them to move. Rise, standing on another rock, shouted the same. The terrified girls tried to assess both options, but the flow was already too strong to wade through. So, the only realistic option left was to jump across to Rise. Rachel was ready to move first. Still holding her GoPro, she extended the selfie stick and made a leap toward Rise. Fortunately, he managed to grab the stick and pull her to safety. Right after Rachel, Maddie came next, and then Michaela. Rise tried to hold on to her, but suddenly lost his grip. The girl was swept away by the current, screaming in terror. Several seconds later, Rise lost his own footing and was pulled in too. Back on the rock, Rachel and Maddie tried to help the others. They caught Gemma just in time, as the current nearly took her as well. At that point, only Alice was left. She was still on the lower part of the rock, unable to climb higher but clutching the surface tightly. Sam yelled for everyone to stay back, but Rachel didn't hesitate. She couldn't stand by and watch another friend be swept away right in front of her eyes. So, Rachel climbed down to the lower level and extended her hand to pull Alice up. Alice leaped toward her, and for a moment, their hands connected. But the current was too strong, and several seconds later, the water tore them apart, pulling both under. The entire horrific scene of the young people being washed away one by the rushing water was witnessed by 2 German tourists, Katrin Taylor and Kevin Kiao, who had come to explore the perfect views of the rapids. They were standing on one of the official viewing platforms right above the river and, unfortunately, couldn't do anything to help. But as soon as they realized what was happening, they immediately called the police. When the standard release ended and the water finally calmed, 2 silhouettes suddenly appeared on the surface. It was Rise and Michaela. Both were covered in bruises since the current had violently slammed them into the rocks, but alive. Michaela later said it felt like she had been underwater forever, convinced she was about to lose consciousness. But when she saw light, she forced herself to swim toward it. Yet another pleasant surprise came when, a short time later, Alice also made it to the surface and managed to reach the rest of the group. They were incredibly relieved to see her alive, especially her sister Michaela, who had barely recovered from her own plunge into the raging water. Later, Alice described the terrifying experience as being sucked into a washing machine, and she couldn't have described it more accurately. When large volumes of dam water are released into a narrow channel, they form powerful rotating vortices. These currents pull a person underwater, spinning them violently, stripping away their sense of direction, and forcing them into chaotic motion. Water speeds can reach up to 25 meters per second, strong enough to cause blunt trauma, disorientation, or unconsciousness in seconds. Not to mention the fatal risks. A violent blow right to the head against the rocks, or something as simple but deadly as running out of air before reaching the surface. Therefore, Alice, Michaela, and Rise were extremely lucky to make it out alive. However, now that 6 of the 7 people in the group had miraculously made it back, one main question remained. What happened to Rachel? When police arrived at the scene, they immediately launched a full-scale search operation. Their focus was the stretch of the Wiccado River just below the Arataisha Dam, a narrow, fast-moving section filled with jagged rocks and swirling rapids. Search teams combed every rock pool and eddy where the current could have carried her. The search dragged on for nearly 8 exhausting hours. Then, late that evening, the first news came. Rachel had been found, trapped in a rock pool downstream, but, unfortunately, lifeless. The official cause of death was listed as drowning. Most likely, Rachel was either pinned beneath the surface or slammed against rocks by the current, making any chance of escape impossible. Even despite Rachel's excellent physical condition and strong swimming ability, when an investigation began into what led to the tragedy, many questioned how the group could have ignored not only the sirens, but also the warning signs about dam releases posted right at the entrance to the official bush path the group had taken. But Rachel's father, Kevin DeJong, refused to believe this. He knew his daughter too well. She was cautious, responsible, and definitely not someone who would recklessly ignore obvious danger. The surviving group members agreed. There were no warning signs anywhere on the route they used. And they were telling the truth. Coroner Wallace Bain, who led the official investigation, confirmed that there was no sign posted anywhere on the bush track the group had followed. As it turned out, the sign had been stolen just 2 weeks before the tragedy. And most shockingly, the Department of Conservation, the government agency responsible for managing public lands, was aware of the missing sign, yet failed to put up a temporary replacement that could have saved Rachel's life. Having barely recovered from the loss of his only daughter, Kevin DeJong not only found the strength to keep going, but became a leading advocate for improving safety measures at the Arataisha Rapids and below the Arataisha Dam. And Kevin's persistence paid off. The warning sign was finally replaced, the unauthorized bush track was blocked off with a steel fence, and climbing ropes that had made it easier to reach the spill zone were removed. Mercury Energy, the company that owns and operates the dam, also revised its release procedures. And perhaps most importantly, Rachel's death sparked a nationwide resonance about overall dam safety and public accountability. But sadly, even after the tragedy and the improved safety measures introduced, people are still seen swimming in those same dangerous waters, each one hoping that somehow they'll avoid Rachel's fate. It's been over 8 years since the tragic end of Rachel DeJong, who sacrificed herself desperately trying to save her friend. And to this day, hers remains the only fatal incident ever recorded at the Arataisha Dam. But not in the world. Just one quick scroll through my channel is all it takes to see how many lives are lost every single day to the very same kind of reckless behavior, like by those who choose to swim in that same pool after the accident. And sometimes, not even warning signs are enough to stop them. Now let me ask you, what would you do if right in the middle of a fun trip with your friends, a siren suddenly sounded? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking, real-life stories that one day might just stop you before you make a life-altering mistake.